I would enjoy having some Kentucky bourbon with Mitch McConnell. I don't know what his preferred drink is, but my interactions with Mitch McConnell, he has always been very straightforward with me. To his credit, he has never made a promise that he couldn't deliver.
Bottom line, the president and Republicans do not get along. But if critical issues such as immigration and health care are to be moved forward, the two men in charge need to settle their differences and get to work. Shot of bourbon, anybody? Welcome to MidPoint. Former Republican member of the House from Oklahoma's 5th Congressional District, 7 terms in the House and thus well-schooled in the ways of Washington, columnist and radio host for the Washington Times, Ernest Istook joins us today. Congressman, thanks so much for being here.
Ed, good to be with you. Thanks.
I'm sorry, Congressman, but I don't have a shot of bourbon to offer you to begin things, so I hope that's going to be all right.
I drink it anyway.
I didn't know if you're a bourbon drinker or not, but
I don't drink at all.
This whole thing that we hear about Mitch McConnell and the president getting together, obviously it seems there's not going to be any alcohol involved, but knowing what's gone on here in the past, can these two men actually sit down, discuss things, and move anything forward, or is it simply just impossible right now?
Well, it depends upon who's willing to give up what. You know, two people can always agree if one person will give in to the other one. That's really the concern that people have in Washington, or at least conservatives like me have right now in Washington. It's not a concern over can they work something out. It's a concern that it'll be worked out by giving in to President Obama. It could be on amnesty, it can be on a lot of tax things, it can be a lot of spending things, you name it. So this notion that the problem is people can't get along, that's not the problem. Have you ever tried to get along with somebody who just wasn't willing to yield and was harsh, strident, negative, condemnatory? That's what Barack Obama is. That's the problem.
Why then does the president not want to yield? I know we've asked this question a million times, but we have to continue to ask it. Knowing what happened in the midterms, matter of fact, Mitch McConnell even said he's perplexed about the president's dramatic move to the left after a butt kicking. So it would seem here that the president is basically saying, you know, Mitch, tough. It's my way or the highway. I'm the president. Do your worst and let legacy be damned.
Well, you know, it's just like the old saying that possession is 9/10 law. President Obama feels he has possession of the executive branch, and that's the biggest part of government's machinery. Now, that's not the constitutional design to say that the executive branch has all the power, but if you look at the number of people who work for the executive branch, which is like a couple of million people or so, compared to those who work for the legislative branch, the Congress, or for the courts, the executive branch has the agencies, they've got the regulatory power, they've got the Justice Department, they've got the FBI, the national security mechanisms. President Obama, under his interpretation of things, feels that he holds all the cards, so why should he compromise at all? That's what he wanted the presidency, to be able to get his own way. And what perplexes me is that Mitch McConnell would say he was perplexed that President Obama, after the elections, would act according to his own beliefs. After all, he was rated the most liberal senator in the entire U.S. Senate when he served in the Senate with Mitch McConnell.
Let's ask then about the next step here for Mitch McConnell. He sits down with the president. In your opinion, is Mitch McConnell the only adult in the room?
Oh, well, you know, I don't quite put it that way. I think the challenge is this. Mitch McConnell is a negotiator and a politician who works out political compromises. Barack Obama is a politician who insists that the compromises, so-called, be according to his way. Just like he said on, immigration. Well, if they won't act, I will. If people won't give me what I want, I'm not going to negotiate with them. I'm going to go out and use the machinery of the executive branch to try to do it anyway and dare somebody to stop me. So, unfortunately, there are other adults besides Barack Obama that act that way. I would not consider them any of my best friends, however.
It obviously is not going to be what we would consider to be a friendly little meeting when and if it does
No,
happen, and even
not
if
at
there
all.
is bourbon involved.
Yeah.
Congressman Stan,
Let me share something
I
with
have
you.
to take a break here, so hang on to that
Okay,
thought, whatever it is. We're going to come back on
I'll
the
do
other
it.
side with Congressman Ernest Istook. Here's another one of those what are they thinking moments. The two Republicans who have little or no chance of becoming president in 2016. We'll discuss that. And at 51 minutes after the hour, telling it like it is brings up another so-called peacemaker willing to cover up the reality of Ferguson. That and so much more right here on MidPoint. Welcome back to MidPoint. Former Republican member of the House from Oklahoma's 5th Congressional District, columnist and radio host for the Washington Times, Ernest Istook joins us. All right, Congressman, you had one more note you wanted to make about Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, Mitch wants to lean over as Senate Majority Leader in January, and I've heard other members of Congress start echoing that theme. Let me tell you what that means. They're saying they want the tough decisions to be made while Republicans are weaker and the Democrats and Harry Reid have full control of the U.S. Senate. They want to let the tough decisions be made on liberal Democrat terms rather than standing up for the things that the voters voted for in this election. Voters didn't vote to extend the time that Harry Reid is in charge. They voted to cut it off as quick as they can. So this notion that we have to start January, the Republican majority with a clean slate, is dangerous because it means we're going to roll over and play dead just to get the tough issues off the table so we don't have to deal with them and they'll be resolved the wrong way. That
Congressman,
scares me.
I got to be honest with you. It sounds again as if the Republicans, even after the midterms and a resounding win here, are right back to the same infighting that we've seen all summer long, because we have some saying, we don't want Jeb Bush, we don't want Mitch McConnell to do this, we don't want you to give one single inch here on anything that you were elected for at the midterms. We've got infighting again. Isn't this going to just tear this party apart again?
Well, we do have infighting in the Republican Party. You're exactly right. Now, it hasn't torn the party apart because they still realize that as much as there is between some Republicans, between the what the people who like to call themselves mainstream Republicans and conservative Republicans, who I believe are actually mainstream, sure, there's a gulf there, but there's a much larger gulf between all of them and the liberal Democrats, the so-called progressives. That's the biggest gulf. So even though there's infighting among Republicans, they realize that it's better than the alternative.
Do you think, though, that we can solve this? The Republicans can actually come to some sort of a consensus before it becomes dangerous, and then we get down to shutdowns and all these other different items that you know Republicans would get blamed for, regardless if they were to blame or not?
Yeah, a big question is how much courage do Republicans have to stand up and take a beating from the liberal media in order to stop President Obama's wayward amnesty program.
Then who's the courageous
that
one,
would give
Congressman?
jobs to millions of illegals at the expense of Americans.
Who's the courageous one then? Who's that one person that needs to stand up, have a spine, and get it done and lead?
Oh, there's not just one person. That's the problem. In the legislative body, you've got to have a whole bunch of people that have spines. You've got plenty of people that have courage in Washington, D.C., but we don't have enough of them. We have too many people that don't like bad publicity, or they say, oh, we'll be blamed for a government shutdown. Well, a government shutdown is only a small percentage of the government. It's not essential services that get shut down. It's a that's used. And if you're not willing to play hardball, you are going to lose. I promise you.
Are you in favor of a shutdown if it's necessary?
No, well, I don't think a shutdown is, quote, necessary. But I do think that if other spending for federal agencies temporarily lapses and some people are not able to do their work in the federal government, that's a small price to pay compared to having millions of people who are here illegally get work permits, take jobs at the expense of Americans, extend the unemployment woes of many people, extend the number of people, a record number of people who are on food stamps. I mean, the consequences of President Obama's amnesty are much worse than a so-called government shutdown, which is a misnomer. It's not really a shutdown.
So if you had a vote and nothing moved on immigration, you would say, go ahead and do the shutdown, whatever level.
Well, again, what I would say is I wouldn't say I want a shutdown. I would say that I want to fund other parts, essential parts of government, but I am not going to put a penny into helping finance President Obama's amnesty program because there's tons of processing. It's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars just to do the processing and issue the permits that they have in mind. So nobody votes in favor of a shutdown. It's only a question of, are you willing to vote to give money to President Obama's amnesty program? I think most Americans say, don't do that.
I only have about 20 seconds left. I needed to get this question in. Mitt Romney and Ben Carson 1-2 in a recent poll for president. Do you really think either one of them could get elected?
I think there's a possibility. We have to wait and see who they're up against. And keep an eye on Wisconsin's governor, Scott Walker, as well. He's got a lot of support, too.
But you would say that Scott Walker probably has a better chance than Mitt Romney or Ben Carson.
Oh, I think it may, but give Ben Carson a lot of credit. You know, he hasn't been tested with the electorate, and he's got a lot of appeal.
All right, we're going to come back and revisit this again. Congressman Istook, it's always a pleasure. We'll read you in the Washington Times as well. Look forward to the next time. Thanks so much.
All righty.
Billions and billions of dollars being spent over toys and gadgets featuring some of the worst commercial moments in broadcast history. It's called Christmas marketing. It's right after the break here on MidPoint.